welcome to my channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be this month's installment of Would I Repurchase? So that is a series I do here on my channel where I randomly pull 10 palettes from my collection and then talk about if I would or would not repurchase them. It's pretty straightforward, so if that sounds good to you, if you like palette videos, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I would love it if you stuck around. But with all that, let's just get started. All right, so like I said, this is a monthly series that I do, and a lot of people do this video. I will link some creators down below in the description box, and everyone has their own style. The way that I like to do it is I like to pretend all these palettes are in my collection. I've used them, I know them, and overnight they disappeared. I give the example every single episode that, my sister came over and she took the palette and she's pretending like she didn't, but I know that she secretly did. So would I repurchase those palettes knowing them, loving them? Some people do it where if the palette was just released today and it was a new release, would they repurchase it? I like doing it already have tried the palette. And of course, that's with the caveat that none of these palettes are discontinued because some of them are inevitably since they are a little bit older. So I like to randomize them from my Tiny Decisions app. So I am just going to pull that up here. Here I have it. And I'm going to put up a little screen recording of pulling my palettes because I find that to be a little bit easier, and then I don't have to write them down because I have them saved. So we're just going to get started pulling 10 palettes. And the first one that I have is the Essence Salut Paris. Next is Laura Geller, Keep Your Eyes on the Prize, the Wheel of Fortune palette. Third, Natasha Denona, Metropolis. Natasha Denona Mini Retro. I have a lot of Natasha Denona and Pat McGrath. I was wondering when we were going to get the bulk of them. Roen Gold Lust. Okay, that's number 5. Odens Eye Snow Dream. Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2. Chanel Tweed Pourpre. I think that's my last Chanel Tweed one that I have to talk about. I need 2 more. Persona Identity. And then the last one, Natasha Denona Love. Okay, so a lot of Natasha Denona. So let me go grab those palettes and we'll get to talking about them. I have all my palettes in front of me and we're just going to get started in the order that they were pulled. So the first one that I have is the Essence Salut Paris. Now, I think it's pretty obvious I purchased this for the packaging. I don't have a lot from Essence. It's just not a brand, I don't know, that I've prioritized. So here's what the inside looks like. And it took me a long time to try this palette. I kind of thought it was boring. And then I pulled it into a Shop My Stash, finally, and I'm in love with this palette. I love it so much. It is very just plain, but it does so much. I loved all the looks I came up with. They were very pretty, especially like these mattes here, like solid mattes. Very much enjoyed this palette. I actually would repurchase it, mostly because it's inexpensive, but I did love having this in my collection, and I was very surprised with the quality given that this palette I think was like $5 or $6. Only bought it for the packaging, and a surprising win in my book. I really, really liked this one. Next up is the Laura Geller Wheel of Fortune palette. Do we remember when this came out and was just like a huge buzz on the internet? I mean, who would have thought Laura Geller would collab with Wheel of Fortune? But it was a smart collab. And on top of that, it was a good collab. It really kind of got Laura Geller talked about again on the internet. And I think a lot of people started exploring her products more. And she has some some good products. Now, trying to remove myself from the IP and just look at the color story, I don't know if I would repurchase it. It has a very good formula. I'm not saying that. I actually reach for this palette organically quite often because it's a very solid, dependable, reliable palette. I like it a lot, but I don't know if it's special enough to stand out in my collection as far as neutrals go. Like if this disappeared overnight, this is one where I could easily dupe this within my collection. So it's just not special enough. Would I recommend this palette? Yes. This is not a reflection on the palette itself. This is more just looking at my collection as a whole and filling in the gaps. This would not really take away that big of a piece of the puzzle. It would leave a very, very small hole in my heart, and I would miss the IP more than I would miss the palette. So I'm going to say no, I wouldn't repurchase this one. And then the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. This one I'm glad I purchased because they discontinued it pretty quickly and a lot of people are upset they couldn't get their hands on it. But if you look at this palette, I think this is everything I stand against as far as palettes. I have tried so many times pulling this into a Shop My Stash. I ranked all my Natasha Denona palettes. I'll link that video above. I don't think this came in high. While, like I said, I'm glad that I have it and I tried it. This, I can't do this palette justice. I don't have a problem with the creamy mattes like a lot of people did. This is purely a color story issue for me. I am not like a really warm tone lover like this. And yes, like you have these blues, but I don't know. I haven't reached into this palette and done a look that I've just been super in love with. It is definitely one of the Natasha Denona palettes I just have a harder time being creative with. So being like cutthroat brutal, I really want to like be honest, like would I spend $130 repurchasing this palette? I just don't think that I would. I would be happy with other palettes in my collection if this just disappeared overnight. If you can do this palette justice, like please let me know in the comments. Let me know for all these palettes, like if you have them, if you love them, if you have the same opinion as me. But for this one, like I want to love it and get the hype more than I do. I really wish that I loved warm tones sometimes and I just felt like they were a little bit more flattering on my eye, but I don't love them. I like a true neutral, and this is very orange. So I'm going to put this in the would not repurchase pile. Then we have another Natasha Denona palette. This one I would hands down repurchase over and over and over again. This is the Natasha Denona Mini Retro palette. Quite honestly, one of Natasha Denona's best mini palettes, in my opinion. The variety, the color story, love everything about this. Very disappointed by her coming out with the retro palette. While I love that palette, I do. I love the midi retro. It doesn't fit this palette, which this palette came out first. And I wish that it was really more of an extension of this one. I know there's the retro glam, and I do eventually plan on picking that up. I haven't yet because I purchased the Sydney Grace in Mel's Memory bundle, which she did like her own take on this palette as a midi palette with Sydney Grace singles. So I purchased that. I thought it was a little bit better, but this is a stunning color story. And like I said with the Metropolis, like I reach for this palette and I love the looks that I come out with this palette. The Metropolis, not so much. So this one I would repurchase, definitely. And now we're moving into Roen. So I have the Gold Lust palette here. I bought Roen and I bought 3 off the bat because I tend to do that. I will want to try a brand, and instead of just trying one, I'll buy all the ones that interest me. So I have 3 of these. This is the Gold Lust, like I said, kind of an all cream formula, and quite honestly, I think Roen's overhyped. I don't love this. It's okay, but for the price point, no. This is my least favorite of the 3 palettes that I have. I have the 52 Degrees, which is kind of cool toned, and I have the 1111. This is more gold, more warm. So why did I buy it? I don't know. I felt like I needed to be part of some secret Roen club. I don't need to be part of every single club. I need to just be okay not being part of some clubs. It's all right. But, you know, I have it now. I'll use it. I still wouldn't repurchase it though. Like, definitely not, especially for the price. If it was half off, I would maybe be more inclined to recommend it. But for like the 50 something dollars this is, like, I would recommend a Chanel quad over this. Now we have our first and only Odens Eye. I think I'm getting through the Odens Eye. The wheel decides, like, some brands it likes more than others. It's pulled a lot of Odens Eye, so I think I'm nearing the end. This is the Snow Dream, the last holiday palette that I have to talk about. And here's what it looks like. I don't hate this palette, actually. If I had to rank the 4 holiday palettes, which I did a video, any of the videos that I did on these palettes will be linked up above and down below, so I won't keep saying that. But this was my second favorite of the 4 Odens Eye holiday palettes. Christmas Eve was the first. I think I pulled that pretty recent, if memory serves, like the last episode or the episode before. And then this is second. It is Christmas. Like, it has the red and the green and the gold, but also, like, I feel like this is a good, like, kind of well-rounded all-year palette, not just a Christmas theme palette, a winter palette, but I could see this just being like a good neutral. Like, you have kind of this lighter green, so you could even pull this in for spring, some lighter tones here. I like this one a lot. I do think that Odens Eye formula is becoming less and less reliable, dependable, but this one didn't bother me that much. Now, would I repurchase it? I don't love it. I don't love the color story enough to repurchase it. Again, like, I want to be brutally honest. I don't want to say every single palette I would repurchase. Like, really, I'm on this journey of trying to be more conscious of my purchases. So, like, I would not repurchase this if it disappeared from my collection. Now, next up, I have my Pat McGrath palette. It has not pulled a lot of Pat McGrath. The wheel has not been in favor. There's been some, but not too many. So this one is the Divine Rose 2. Of course, the artwork is stunning. And here's what it looks like. Just like Natasha Denona, I did do a video ranking all my Pat McGrath. And actually, surprisingly, this one ranked pretty high. I like this one better than I like the original Divine Rose. I just think it is more Divine Rose. Like, this is this really pretty duochrome. It's showing pink on camera, but when I look at it, it's green. Let's see if I can catch the flip this way, or even in the mirror. I don't know how people do that without, nope, I'm just embarrassing myself. Here it is. Just trust me. I think you can see the green that way. Maybe. No. All right, I'm gonna stop. So I actually would repurchase this palette. Pat McGrath has really been testing me as of late, and how much I want to support them, spend my money with them. But I actually really like this palette a lot. I think that it's unique, it's innovative, it's what we used to love about Pat McGrath in a palette, and I wish she would come out more with this kind of color stories. I really do. It just makes me sad thinking about the decline of Pat McGrath as a whole. I don't know why. I just feel like they've really gone downhill and could have done so much and really been like an iconic brand. And they just backtracked. They took like 50 steps backwards. It's just sad. So yes, I would actually repurchase this palette. I have 3 more palettes to talk about. The next one is the Chanel Tweed. This is the purple tweed one. And let's see. I talk about the Brune and Rose all the time. That one I already talked about in one of these episodes. Here's what the purple looks like. I don't regret this at all. I do love this, and I would spend my money and purchase this again. It is discontinued now, but we're going off the assumption that it's readily available, and I would miss this in my collection. It's one of the most special makeup items that I cherish in my collection. All 3 of the tweeds that I have, I only picked up 3 of the 4, which I'm very happy with. I'm glad that I picked up the color stories that spoke to me. And while like this doesn't get that much love, especially in comparison to my Brune and Rose, like I just reach for that one more, this one's really pretty. And it kind of looks same, like these two look the same, these two look very similar, but they are different. And I come up with pretty looks with this. So as long as I do that, I think this is one I would miss in my collection. I would think about and I would remember or notice that it was missing in my collection. So I would say that I would repurchase this. Now we have 2 left. So Persona Identity, I have the original. Mine's still going strong. I believe one of my very first videos that I ever put up was like my top 5 neutral palettes, and this is one of them. Love this palette so much. This is a neutral palette and it has some cool tones in here. It was one of the first neutral palettes because this has been out for like pushing 10 years maybe. It was one of the first neutral palettes that had some cool tones in it. We were just seeing so much warm tone palettes, modern renaissance, like all the Natasha Denona sunrise, sunset, like so many warm tones. And this is the first true neutral leaning, kind of cool, and you still have some warm tones in here, palette. I love this so much. I kind of forget about it. It gets lost in my collection, but this is one I would repurchase for being a neutral palette. Like I said, the Wheel of Fortune palette isn't a neutral palette that really stands out and leaves like a big hole in my collection. This does. This is just one I know I can rely on. This Bombshell shade is a shimmer, and it's this really pretty taupe. I very much enjoy it. I love the addition of chic, kind of like this plummy color to bring some purple elements to the palette. I think this was really well done. It's one of my only things from Persona, but I very much just highly regard this palette, and I would definitely repurchase it. Then the very last one I have to talk about is my third Natasha Denona, the Natasha Denona Midi Love. And no, I would not repurchase this. I've talked about this palette before. It's not my favorite. Like the Metropolis, I have trouble creating looks with this. I really struggle. I pull it into Shop My Stash again, try to push myself to create looks, and I just have a hard time. Individually, I love all these shades. And this is the palette that's making me really consider pulling apart my Natasha Denona palettes and kind of curating color stories for myself, because I think that if I pulled in like maybe 2 mattes and a shimmer and then like 2 neutral mattes from the I Need a Nude or the Glam palette, I would have a much easier time with this palette. I just think it's bordering too big, and it's creating just chaos in my head, and I can't make sense of it. If you love this palette and know of anyone who has looks where maybe I could get some inspiration from them on how to create stuff, I'd love to see that, because I don't know what it is. I just struggle with this palette, and I wanted it so bad. Like, individually love it, but I would not repurchase it now. It's definitely a Natasha Denona palette I could skip. This was one I think kind of at the time I was buying most, if not all, the Natasha Denona palettes that were coming out. I've definitely gotten away from that. Like I don't have the Retro Glam. I don't have the Yucca. I'm trying to be a lot more picky with the Natasha Denona palettes that I have, just so they're not collecting, sitting there, adding to clutter, and I don't reach for the ones that I love, because the ones that I don't love are taking up space. Anyways, that is all 10 palettes. So let's see what we have here. we have an even split. So here are the 5 I would not repurchase: the Laura Geller Wheel of Fortune, Natasha Denona Metropolis, the Roen Gold Lust, Odens Eye Snow Dream, and then the Natasha Denona Love, and then 5 that I would repurchase. I thought this was going to be less of a 50-50 split. So Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2, Chanel Purple Tweed, Persona Identity, Essence Salut Paris, and the Natasha Denona Mini Retro. So it always makes me happy when I see like a half and half split, because even though it's random, if I have a video where there's more negative than positive, it makes me reconsider like what's in my collection. Like, do I need to go through and do a declutter? I am thinking after finishing this series, which I still have a lot of palettes left to go, so this series will be going on for a few more months now, but I'm thinking that after I'm done going through all my palettes, I'll go through, rewatch the videos, and take all the palettes I said no to, and then kind of do like a battle of the palettes, a champion, and see like which ones I can declutter, which ones I actually want to keep, or do some kind of series on that, I'm thinking. So if that would interest you, let me know down below. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions on this palette, but this is where I'm going to leave you all. I hope you're having a great one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.